So my name is Pepe Agell. I'm originally from Barcelona, so it's great to be back home. But I'm based in San Francisco, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Chartboost. We're going to talk a little bit more about what we do. We're a startup. We were born in San Francisco again, and we help developers around the world build a business. We have a platform of advertising for game developers and app developers from all over the world. And that's me.
Thanks.
That's me. Very happy to be here.
Pepe.
Thanks so much.
I think the mic is working again. So I'm Jordi Romero, CEO and founder of Factorial. Happened to have lived in San Francisco back in 2011 when you guys were starting Chartboost. So it's going to be super interesting to share your experience. So the topic here is how to scout for talent in San Francisco, Barcelona, and a couple other places, right? So tell us more about your first hire in Chartboost.
The first hire. So we started in 2011 with not a lot of savings. Maria, my wife, actually, and I, and a third person, co-founder and CTO, Sean, they actually met at a previous startup. And I think this is one of the key learnings when you hire, especially the first people. They're so critical. In this case, it's not hiring just an employee. It's looking for a co-founder. The importance of having worked together, understanding the dynamics between them two was extremely important. And my learning is that you never know with whom you're going to start your next startup, right? And every job position that we have, every company that we work at can be a great source for new co-founders in the future, right? So one of the things that I've learned is to keep an eye very open. In that case, it worked out very well. They worked together. They had worked together at a previous company making games. This is actually where the idea of Chartboost and helping other developers came from. And they knew from the get-go that they were great partners working together, right?
So you and your wife, how technical were you back then?
I would say zero.
Okay.
Zero. I'm an engineer, but I'm a mechanical engineer, which in Silicon Valley, that doesn't count, unfortunately.
It's the wrong kind of engineer.
It's I always say it's the engines that brought us here. But if you're not a CS, a computer science engineer, unfortunately, again, you don't count. It's very unfortunate.
So quite critical to find your CTO, right? Your technical co-founder back then?
It is critical when you start a tech company. I think, well, I've met entrepreneurs that have started a company themselves or with a co-founder, but without that technical DNA. And they can be successful, but I think when you're really thinking about building a tech startup, having that technical background since the very beginning, at the end, this is what people look at when they look at our company. So yes, it has been critical to have the brain, the soul, and the hands of the product in the co-founding team since the beginning.
Absolutely. So how long did you go until you actually brought somebody who was not in the founding team?
So we started hiring, again, I think I said that when we started Chartboost, we were very young. We didn't have much savings and much money to put into the company, so we started with interns. Again, connections were super helpful. The first two interns had worked with us before in previous companies, and it was a big sacrifice. Even if it was an internship pay, it was a lot of money for us, right? Because we left our jobs, our previous jobs, and we went from having a salary to having to pay salaries without having a salary, which makes things a little bit difficult. But again, the first hires were interns, and then it wasn't until probably 6 months later where we raised our seed round / Series A that we raised $2.5 million that we were able to hire proper people full-time and without a component under the table. I'm not going to talk too much about that in case there's anyone here from the IRS, but yes, we did have to pay some people under the table.
Okay. Probably prescribed already. So.
Yes, yeah.
So also the cost of living in San Francisco, right? So just for the interns plus yourselves being able to pay your rent there and just bare groceries, that's a lot more than you would need in a city like Barcelona to start a business, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think also San Francisco has dramatically changed since then. It was already expensive, but I think one of the challenges that we have right now in Silicon Valley is that you may have heard or read about the increase of real estate in San Francisco, but it's truly a problem. The city is not that big. It's actually, it's smaller than Barcelona, and the real estate market is so expensive, and there's no room to grow. I mean, the city is very limited. So that means that salaries need to grow according to the cost of life. And it is very hard to justify these days having teams, and especially engineering teams in San Francisco. And that is one of the reasons why startups like us need to think about how to decentralize their engineering teams. And VCs are actually valuing more and more entrepreneurs that are able to build remote teams that are equally good with the right talent, but successfully. Because, again, it doesn't make sense to have all your R&D, all your engineering power in a city like San Francisco.
So we'll go to remote teams in a bit.
Yep.
First of all, so 6 months in, you raise your $2.5 million, and you start hiring people, right?
Yep.
How did that process go? Did you hire an external recruiter? Did you bring in a recruiter in-house? Did you just use your networks from the past? After the interns, I mean.
A lot of the talent came from networking. So prior experience, I mean, we actually brought a lot of initial folks from previous jobs that we had and from teams that we had in the past. That's always super powerful. Same as referrals. I mean, there's nothing better than someone who comes because an existing employee refers that person, right? That the ties that you have with that person from the beginning are super powerful. And that also means that you're building a great culture, because that means that your employees, your current employees, are saying great things about you as an employer, which is very powerful. But we did start working with external recruiters first, like part-time or freelancers. And at some point, we started building our talent team, we call it these days, which today is 3 people, actually based in San Francisco.
Okay. And they work for the entire company?
They work for the entire company. We have now offices in Beijing, in Amsterdam, and the most recent in Barcelona. I have to say that everyone is a recruiter at Chartboost, right? And I think the team, it's a centralized team. They relied a lot on the office managers, for instance, or the people ops managers, which are essentially the managers of the day-to-day of the office, the different offices that we have. They do rely a lot on them, but at the end, everyone is a recruiter, and they manage the global pipeline of talent.
Okay, so Pepe, do you remember some of the biggest mess-ups you did back then with hiring people there?
Oh, we've done so many.
Some tied to the cultural difference, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, we've fucked up, and excuse my French.
I tried to avoid that word.
No, I think there are mismatches with culture. Culture is extremely important. And at the beginning, we didn't think about, even when we were 10 people and we were all kind of friends, you don't pay too much attention about the company values because they're natural. You work with the folks, you know how they think, how they make decisions. There's a moment when you start scaling that you need to put the values in writing, and they need to become very present on everything you do at the company. And I'm not just thinking about holding posters on the wall saying, hey, these are my values. I'm thinking about making sure that managers evaluate their talent based on the values, making sure that everything you celebrate is usually tied to a value, make them truly present. And we've had hires that were not aligned with our company values, and we had to make decisions. We've also, I mean, one of the things that happens when you scale rapidly, and we went, just to give you an idea, in 2013, we started the year with 30 people, and we ended the year with 100, which is, it is a pretty dramatic change. I know that there may be companies from the audience that have done these even bigger steps, but for us, it was a huge transformation, starting a year with 30 people, you know all the names, and ending with 100 people at the first international office. That was a big change. So you realize that not everyone follows the values or feels the values the same way. You also realize that the originals, the old-timers, which were part of the family at the beginning, they don't scale with the company. And because we should technically, all of us should reapply to our jobs every time the company changes. And companies change so much in a year, and especially in a fast-pacing industry. So what happened is that there were originals that had kind of a sense of entitlement that was not deserved. Not because you're old in the company, that means that you always need to have manager responsibilities. I mean, you need to have certain qualities to become a manager. So anyways, I think a lot of the mess ups that we've had in regards to talent were also because the talent didn't scale with us, or we didn't know how to scale the talent with the changes that the company has gone through throughout the years.
Okay. And I mean, hiring so many people in a city like San Francisco, I'm assuming you had to import some talent from abroad.
We do, and for us, I mean, we're a US company, but obviously we have European blood since the beginning. And for me, even as an employer, as an entrepreneur, living in a country that has been built thanks to immigration, having a diverse team is extremely important. We've been very vocal also with some of the latest immigration policies that the current administration in the US has carried, because I think it's extremely valuable for any startup to have a diverse team since the beginning. Right now, I don't know how many people we have that were not born in the US in the San Francisco office, but I know that we have around 20% of the headcount is actually sponsored. We're sponsoring the visa for them. So that, I mean, we have other residents that were not born in the US, and that for me is extremely important and something that makes me very proud, because as an employer, knowing that you're generating jobs and opportunities not only to people that were born in the country where you're in, but also facilitating these tremendous experiences, it's super cool.
Okay, so we're still in the US. Before we get to the new offices you started opening abroad, what would you recommend to somebody from the audience, right? So most entrepreneurs decided to fly tomorrow to San Francisco and start their business there.
Oh, I mean, there are many reasons why you would want to go to San Francisco. If you're thinking just to go there because it may be easier to raise money, don't do it. It's extremely hard. I know that maybe there's more VCs, they put more money, but I usually recommend to prove your product to technically and hopefully generate some revenues. You can get closer to break even before, because what you're gonna find is a very competitive market. I know Silicon Valley has been idealized, but it is extremely competitive. There's a lot of VCs, but that doesn't mean that there are millions falling for everyone. And you need to go there when you have, again, a solid business, or you know how the business is gonna work. Ideally, you're already profitable in your original market, and you go there really because there's a market to scale, and with that, maybe VCs come in, right? Funding is part of the equation, but I would never make that the goal.
No, okay, so let's focus on why you want to go there, right? So
Yeah.
My previous company, we started in Barcelona, went to San Francisco with RepBooth. With Factorial, like also the market consolidated a lot, and we made a conscious decision to not go there, right? Because as you said, venture capital matured a lot here, tech talent, software as a services industry, it's a lot more mature. Let's say for whichever reason, one of these entrepreneurs decides it's the right time to go to San Francisco or anywhere in the US. What's the key learning from you in terms of being successful there?
So the first thing is you have to go and go 100%. I've seen the mixed formula.
One-way ticket?
One-way ticket, okay. Ideally, right? Because I've seen people that are, yeah, I'm going, but I'm going back and forth. You need to be there. And the other thing is that you need to change the way you operate. I know that we're within the Western markets, and we're not talking about building a business in a completely different culture like Japan or I don't know, India, but it's still very different. And you need to be ready to reset your mindset. Ideally, try to hire local people as soon as possible to just help you go through that transformation. But again, the no return ticket would be the first thing. Be there, be 100%, and be ready to invest, because unfortunately, it is not a cheap market, and this is not a market that you can conquer when you're doing things halfway. You need to go all in.
Okay, so there is another way, right? Which is some people just go there, set base, and then they actually hire their team in their local city or other places around the world. You're kind of you did the other way around. You went all in, and now you're expanding all around the world. So tell us about the first few offices that you opened outside of San Francisco.
Yeah, so the first offices were driven by the business revenue. We, back in 2012, we already had a lot of business coming from Europe. We work with developers. There are app developers everywhere. But Europe specifically has a lot of different hubs, development hubs, and we wanted to be closer to this community. And so the first reason why we wanted an office in Europe was to be closer to our clients and be able to help them, to assist them in the same time zone. So it was, again, very driven by the business. We decided to go to Amsterdam, essentially because I was looking to the different cities in Europe. I wanted a city that was not only cool to attract talent, very well connected. Amsterdam is the 4th airport in Europe. It feels pretty much as the center of Europe. And from there, I knew that we could go to any city. Barcelona for our Barcelona clients, Paris, London, Helsinki, St. Petersburg, whatever they are. And we know Amsterdam is a great city. Also, coming from San Francisco, I do believe that the environment and the atmosphere of the city has kind of an impact on the culture of the company. And Amsterdam does feel like San Francisco. It's very international, very cool, very open. You can do it by bicycle. You can cross the city in 15 minutes. You're pretty much everywhere. And I think it's the same with Barcelona. So where I'm going with that is that back in 2013, we started with Amsterdam because the business was here and we wanted to be closer to our clients. We've opened an office in Tokyo that we actually closed after a year and a half because the revenue wasn't there. And we did it because of the same. We had a significant volume of Japanese clients. We needed to speak the language to be able to hold hands, do the bowing, and spend time with them. And that was important for us. China has been the same.
Stop in Japan for a second.
Okay.
So Amsterdam, I think, is kind of more familiar for all of us. So you can imagine hiring somebody to set up shop in Amsterdam. How do you go about doing that in Japan? You went to Tokyo?
Yeah, many times.
Did you just fly there and then start hiring somebody in a hiring spree like you did here in Barcelona? Or you hired somebody, some agency there? Did the government help you in any way?
No help from the government. I was lucky that I had traveled to Japan many times because of the business, because we had clients there and I had visited them and so on. So I had a little bit of a network. Things in Japan are very difficult. I mean, in order to incorporate yourself, you need an agency actually, and you do kind of a joint venture where you pay the agency forever, even if it's not a company that adds any value, it just helps you with the process of incorporating. So we had to go through all that. We didn't get any help from the government, but it was tough. It was tough, especially, I don't speak Japanese, unfortunately, beyond the third sentence, I would say. So it is hard. And thankfully, my personal network, the network of clients that we have, helped me with the word of mouth, expanding the word. And we found a great head. A great head, which is always the key pillar to start expanding, right? I think I mentioned earlier, our goal, we're very humble and lean. When we open an office, that means that we have high expectations. We want to grow the business. We want to have an impact on the partnerships, on the relationships that we have with the market. And in that case, Japan didn't scale the way we wanted. So after a year, we had to make a hard decision of letting everyone go and shut down the office. And that's hard. I think as an employer, I've also learned a lot about not only hiring, which we were talking about, but also firing at the right moment. And you need to make these decisions as part of the progress of any startup.
What's the difference in letting somebody go in the US, in Spain, in China, Japan, or Amsterdam?
Well, I mean, Does
it get easy in any of these countries?
I mean, the US has the main thing that makes the US very agile and very flexible when it comes to employing or letting people go is the fact that there's actually no sense of contract. There's no commitment. Everything is at will. So, and that means at will for both parts. You can say as an employer, tomorrow you don't need to come. But also, as an employee, you can tell your boss, tomorrow, I'm not going to come. Fuck off. And which, obviously, that creates a very different relationship, employer-employee, which, from my perspective, I've learned a lot. It's almost, a lot of my clients are on the free-to-play industry. They have games that are for free. So it's almost like the same thing, is that the expectation with employer-employee is that the relationship will always be engaging. And the moment you lose that engagement, you go. And that creates a lot of responsibility for the companies and entrepreneurs and employers to be always creating opportunities, but it makes the market very agile. And I think there's no stigma. Actually, when I first got to Silicon Valley, I met many people. I went there in 2008, and it was the worst moment of the economy of the US. And I met many people that the first sentence that when they introduced themselves that they told me was, I've been laid off, I'm looking for opportunities. And I was trying to translate that into Spanish here in an event. Me han despedido y estoy buscando oportunidades. I cannot imagine anyone saying in the first sentence, me han despedido, because here we have the sense of you're a failure almost, right? And I think, going back to your question, probably the US is the most agile. I know Silicon Valley within the US economy is a bubble. It's its own bubble. But I think for us, it's been the most difficult in terms of retention. And,
yeah, that was my next question.
But from a firing perspective, it's obviously easier. Japan is probably the most strict. We had to come up with an agreement. At the end, I felt responsible for the people that we had hired and that we had to let go. And I think if you do things well, it had to be agreed on because so we made a proposal that made sense financially to all the employees. We wanted to leave them in good terms. And in fact, I'm still talking to some of them because they were great people, right? So we had to make the business decision, but if you do it according to your values and with responsibility, this is how you need to do it. And I've had to fire people in Amsterdam, which is, I think also pretty strict, not as strict as Japan. And I applied the same principle. You need to do it responsibly according to your values. And I think Spain is a little bit in between. It's less rigid as the Netherlands. I think Spain has done a lot to get more agile, especially after the difficult years that we've had as an economy, and I'm pretty impressed. I mean, things are pretty good. I'm happy.
We'll tell in a few years after you've run your
We'll
company
see.
here.
We'll see. It's been only a few months, so we'll talk.
So tell us a little bit more about the office you opened in China. So how close is it to the US actually in terms of business culture, right? So there is the language and the actual culture, but the business culture, is it so far from the US one?
It is difficult. It is different. Not that much because of the internal culture, but because the business culture. Doing deals in China for me, it's like the Far West back in the day, right? It's very aggressive. You need to be ready to do very aggressive commercial deals. We're a tech platform. Our nature is not to be a deal-based company where you're like almost buying your clients in. And sometimes China does require that, right? So accommodating not that much the difference in culture, but really the difference in business culture is what's been trickiest.
Okay. And then all of those were commercial offices. Now you're starting to hire developers here in Barcelona.
Yeah.
Welcome to the
Thank you.
economy
Thank you.
here.
So good to be back after so many years.
I mean, I guess it's kind of obvious the answer, but what drove you to stop hiring people exclusively in San Francisco and start opening an office here in Barcelona? Is it only the price?
There's two. I'm going to talk. The first one is my personal. Obviously, being from here, being from the city, and having spent so many years abroad in Switzerland first and then in the US, there's that personal ambition of giving back to your city. And there's nothing that makes me happier than contributing somehow into my city, into the tech ecosystem, into the community. So leaving that personal ambition aside, I alluded before, San Francisco doesn't make sense because of the cost, one, and the talent is not that good, meaning there is great talent, but competition is so big that when you look at the pool of talent that is addressable to you realistically is not that big. That's what I meant. And second, there's a problem of loyalty because the work is at will, because there's so much competition. There are recruiters probably hitting every single member in my team every day, every week. asking for how much they're making today because they can match or pay them 20% more. And that's the culture we live in. And especially when you're in your early stages in your career, obviously a 20% bump, I think it matters throughout your life, but especially at the beginning, you want to grow, And that's the ecosystem we live in. And it's not just my direct competitors in my specific industry, is that, I mean, it's the capital of every technology company, right? I have Facebook paying crazy salaries, I have Google, I have Uber, I have Lyft, I have Airbnb, and all these companies have Salesforce. All these companies are within, except for the big campuses in Silicon Valley, but in the city, I have them within probably 4 blocks around my office. So it is challenging from the cost and from a loyalty perspective. Our employees in Amsterdam have been happily with us for over 4 years. And in fact, you give them food every day because we offer lunch every day, and they thank you for being such an awesome employer. In San Francisco, I have to say that you give them peanuts, and they complain because they're peanuts and they're not cashews. And that's what happens, or macadamia nuts. And I'm sorry, but I'm giving you food every day, and that's the reality we live in. So I think it makes sense for companies to look outside San Francisco, and if on top of that need, you have personal ambitions of helping to your own city, and it's obviously I have way more contacts here than when I opened the office in Amsterdam and in Japan, so it all came together very nicely, and we're very happy to be here. We have 10 people already, and we're looking forward to scaling even further.
Cool. So I was actually chatting with an entrepreneur in San Francisco recently, and he told me that the average tenure there is right now 16 months in a tech company, in a tech startup. Do you track this metric for yourself?
Absolutely. Ours is thankful. We've had periods of more attrition than others.
Sorry, it's just 16 months. I don't know if people realize.
No, 16 months.
Like, it means people are barely over a year in the same company and then move on. Like here is something unthinkable.
I know. And yeah, we do track. Thankfully, our KPIs are higher than this. We've had, though, periods of time where we've suffered from attrition. I think, you know what my theory is, Jordi, is that everyone is a shareholder in the company, or at least has the option to become a shareholder. We have an option pool, we have stock option plans, and they last 4 years, or the vesting is 4 years. What this has I encourage, the success of the companies, the success of the employees. I think it's a great retention tool, but at the same time, we're training everyone to think almost as an investor. And if I have 4 years in my life, I can choose, do I want X in 3 different baskets or all my eggs in one basket? Probably as an investor, you would think about, if I can collect shares from 3 different companies, I'll do it. And that's what the 16 months comes. I mean, I think the math is pretty accurate. It's like you have 4-year vesting plans, and if I can fit in 3 companies and get shares from all
developers are good at numbers. They tend to be smart, so they go for the diversified portfolio of stock options.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's a kind of complex system. Any closing remarks? I think we're approaching the end of our time. What would you like the audience to get to from your amazing experience? I mean, a lot of people don't know that Chartboost came from like 2 Catalan or entrepreneurs from Barcelona and then had this success in San Francisco. So anything you want to share with the audience?
I mean, I think a lot of people, actually, I'm going to rephrase what you just said. I don't know it's just that much about us being from here and that they didn't know. I think a lot of people don't know Chartboost as a company, and I think that happens to a lot of B2B companies. We have the disadvantage that consumers don't know us. We're transparent to the users. Even if my product is actually, you have probably, most of you, if you're in apps and you've seen ads, you've probably been touched by my product, but you don't know. It's neutral to you. And the reality is that when you're hiring talent, that it is tricky. It is always easier when you're a B2C company. People know your brand because they're used to seeing it. We have that disadvantage. B2B companies will always have that disadvantage. But the good thing is that if you invest in your brand and you invest in your people, that's the best tool the best investment you can actually do.
Can you make that specific? What is investing in your brand and investing in your people mean actually?
So,
like, what did you do last month to invest in your people or in your brand?
So a couple of things. For instance, an offsite. It is for us very important to not only work hard with the team, but play hard with the team. And I know this is a slogan for many companies, but we take it at heart. And for me, it's very important to be approachable also in a fun environment where everyone knows that we're part of this family, because again, that makes them talk about Chartboost in an exciting way. And that's when you make every employee a recruiter, right? And so offsites, investing. Today, I was only in Barcelona for 12 hours, but I did grab lunch with the Barcelona office, and we took them to just the usual daily menu that most bars in Barcelona and restaurants have. But that is we're just moving next month to our actual office in Barcelona, and we're investing in making it a cool place to work. I'm not thinking about me as an employer. I'm thinking of me as an employee. What is the dream office space? What is the dreamed culture that I want to work at? And that's what I try to do through company initiatives, through refreshing the values on everything that I do, through treating people well, and through spending time well spent with everyone in my team. Being an entrepreneur is the hardest work and job we can have. The least thing you can do is at least have fun with the people that surround you. And that's investing in your brand and investing in your people.
Cool. Thanks, Pepe. I think we're out of time. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks. Thank you.